Our boy stands in the icy throne room, facing the Frost Queen. The system confirms their confrontation. Clad in an ice suit and mask, she smirks, accusing him of abandoning his comrades in a perilous place. The masked brunette questions her claim before drawing his blade, asserting that his allies are not so easily defeated. Through the slit of his mask, his serious expression is visible as he contemplates whether this battle will bring everything to an end. The Frost Queen laughs, signaling to another figure, urging him to eliminate her, insisting that our boy knows nothing of this world. Clutching his sword tightly, he silences her as flashes erupt around him. He declares that now is not the time for idle talk. She grips an icy longsword while he promises to end her in this nightmare. They lunge at each other, their weapons colliding in midair. Sparks fly as their strikes intensify, each blow sending shockwaves through the throne room. A sudden green explosion erupts beside our boy, forcing him to leap back as cracks spread across the floor. A purple beam collides with a blue one, sending dazzling flashes in all directions. With a swift motion, he delivers a glowing strike, shattering the throne room around them. The Frost Queen grins, calling the fight exhilarating. Our boy, gripping his sword, disagrees. Suddenly, a bright beam pierces the Queen's body. He watches in shock as the system announces he is absorbing her power. Ice rapidly spreads over his body, freezing his mask as his gaze remains locked in stunned disbelief. A notification appears, stating that his body will enter hibernation until he fully absorbs the Frost Queen's core. A blue portal glows near a blizzard-covered cliff. Earlier, at the South Pole, the last engine stood in the Frost Queen's nest. A fist slams against the wall in frustration as a brunette with tattoos yells, questioning whether everyone will perish after coming this far. The system reports that only one person can ascend the stairs. The heroes stand together, deliberating. A girl in a long dress, holding a staff, Kali, looks at our boy and urges them to make a balanced decision without delay, and suggests that Spectre should go. The blonde man by the wall adjusts his hat, agreeing with Sky's decision. He explains that they would be at a disadvantage against an enemy wielding ice powers. Gritting his teeth, our boy frustrated that he cannot go himself. The tattooed man waves his hand dismissively, claiming that no one surpasses him, yet he concedes. The long-haired brunette in a hood surprises Kali by agreeing so quickly, making it evident they all share the same sentiment. Kali hesitates before asking what this means. The dark-haired girl replies that they all understand. She too believes Spectre should go. The comrades turn to our boy, reaffirming their decision. He asks if they are sure they won't regret it. The blonde man in the hat chuckles, saying that if they die because he fails, they might, but they trust him. Skya, holding her staff, smiles and reassures him that he will do everything possible to prevent that from happening. The four heroes stand before him, placing their faith in him. Our boy exhales deeply and apologizes. Under the vast blue sky, a rectangular building stands, marking 25 years since 2024, the year humanity faced an undefeatable monster. On stage, a host recounts how the Frost Queen, who froze the Pacific Ocean with a mere wave of her hand, plunged the world into despair. Only 5 brave souls ventured to the South Pole. A young boy in the audience excitedly identifies this as the conquest of the Frost Queen's nest, and the host praises his knowledge. The curtain rises, revealing 5 frozen figures, now honored as the 5 heroes. The host declares that the Frost Queen's defeat led to the emergence of numerous safe zones. Suddenly, small ice shards flake off one of the statues. A boy in the audience points in shock, claiming the statue moved. A girl in a suit smiles and tells him that, for once, his answer is incorrect. Behind the glass, the ice-encased figure begins to crack. The host reassures the audience, explaining that the temperature of the reinforced glass is monitored around the clock. However, as she speaks, her voice falters as more fractures spread. Ice fragments shatter from the frozen figure, and the body collapses against the glass, startling the girl. The system reports that the absorption rate has reached its peak. Our boy, now free from the ice, lies on the floor as the system congratulates him. He slowly rises, shivering, and mutters that he is cold. The system announces that he has fully absorbed the Frost Queen's core and has gained a new freezing ability. Confusion clouds his thoughts. What exactly is happening in this world? Leaning on his hand, our boy gazes forward, finding himself lying on a stage while people rush toward him. Above him, a massive screen displays a striking headline. The legend wakes from a long sleep. After 25 years, Spectre returns from cryogenic stasis. In a sterile hospital room, our boy sits upright on a bed, clad in standard hospital pajamas, his expression frozen in disbelief. He clenches his fist but quickly realizes he has no strength. His body, weakened from decades in cryogenic sleep, refuses to cooperate. Even the simple act of forming a fist feels insurmountable. He stares at his trembling hand, struggling to accept that 25 years have passed. A voice calls his name. The door opens, and doctors enter, informing him that the president of the Players Association is on his way to see him. Our boy turns his head slightly as he asks if he knows the man. If not, he would rather be left alone. He detests unnecessary disturbances. The doctor assures him that the president has always spoken of him as a close friend. Our boy touches his chin, mentally sifting through memories of his comrades. Few could genuinely call him a friend. He nods at the doctors, thanking them for relaying the message. He decides to meet this man and learn more. As he gazes at the world through his mask, he senses the magnitude of change that has taken place. This was what he and his comrades had fought for, a safe world. Yet, an unsettling thought lingers. What is he supposed to do now? All he has ever known is battle. If the war is truly over, does that mean he is now useless? His fingers trail across his mask. Regardless of what happens next, he no longer needs it. Without hesitation, he removes the mask, revealing his face to those around him. The doctors exchange startled glances before one of them questions his decision. Holding the mask in his hand, he smiles faintly. This world is safe now. Heroes are no longer needed. The doctors remain silent, their reactions puzzling him. Before he can inquire further, a man in a sharp suit enters, flanked by 2 guards. The atmosphere in the room shifts as the newcomer steps forward. "I can explain," the man offers. Our boy narrows his eyes before recognition dawns upon him. His voice, tinged with amazement, rings out, "Shim Diaku?" A few onlookers chuckle, while Shim Diaku clears his throat awkwardly. Waving off the others, he gestures for them to leave. Once the room is empty, he turns back, smiling. "You haven't changed." Our boy grins, pointing at him. "That voice, definitely Shim Diaku. You remember how I said you'd go bald in an M shape?" Shim Diaku groans in frustration. "I should have known you'd bring that up. I have nothing more to say after all these years." Instinctively, he touches his head, muttering about the inevitable. Our boy smirks. "Is this the emotional reunion you imagined?" He shakes his head before teasing. "Even after 25 years, no cure for baldness, huh?" Shim Diaka scowls, but quickly sighs in defeat. "You really haven't changed. Neither have you, aside from your appearance." Our boy counters, his gaze turning serious. He leans forward. "But tell me, why did the doctors look so worried earlier?" Shim Diaka's smile fades. He lowers his gaze, hesitating before answering. 25 years ago, when we defeated the Frost Queen, everyone received the same system notification, a message congratulating us on our victory. The system declared that safe zones had been established. People poured into the streets, embracing, laughing, crying. It was supposed to be the end. His voice trembles slightly. That joy lasted less than a minute. Another notification appeared. It announced the installation of an interdimensional elevator in the Pacific Ocean. The world froze in confusion. Then, the system revealed something new, the existence of a second floor. Travel to the interdimensional zone was now possible. People panicked. They demanded answers. Killing the Frost Queen was meant to be the end, not the beginning of something even more dangerous. A global summit was convened. Political leaders, the Players Association, and elite players all sat at the table. After long discussions, they agreed to send an advance team to the second floor. As time passed, the second floor became known as the Land of Opportunity. Humanity gained access to untold resources, advanced knowledge, and mastery over magic and technology. Our boy listens, then interrupts. "That's not what I asked. What happened after that?" Shim Diaka hesitates before answering. "The interdimensional elevator has buttons labeled for floors 1 through 10. Our boy frowns. He visualizes a towering structure and mentally calculates. It took 5 years to defeat the Frost Queen. If 25 years have passed, and they progress steadily, they should be on the 7th floor. How many floors have they conquered? He asks bluntly. Shim Diaka hesitates before covering his mouth with his hand. Our boy's frown deepens. How many, Shim Diaku? A long silence stretches between them before Shim Diaku finally responds. 2. Our boy stiffens. His mind reels at the absurdity of it. 2. In 25 years. Shim Diaku nods grimly. Our boy exhales sharply, leaning back on the bed. He places a hand on his forehead, closing his eyes in frustration. How? How could they be so incompetent? Shim Diaku sighs, his voice heavy. I know it sounds like an excuse, but there's a reason. Our boy doesn't respond immediately. Then, he mutters. Explain. Shim Diaka shifts uncomfortably before speaking again. The 3rd floor. It's unlike anything we've ever faced. It's a volcanic region, uninhabitable for most players. Only those with extreme heat resistance can even set foot there. Our boy's brows knit together as he listens. After years of exploration, we discovered something in the heart of that infernal wasteland, an altar located in the center of a lava ocean. Shim Diaku looks him straight in the eyes. That altar holds the key to advancing, but without the necessary resistance, no one has been able to reach it. Our boy processes this information, his expression unreadable. If this is the state of the world after 25 years, then perhaps, just perhaps, his time as a hero isn't over yet. It required the Frost Queen's core to cool the environment. Excitedly, our boy asks if they managed to find the core. Shim Diaku buries his face in his hands and admits that they searched the Queen's nest tens of thousands of times, but found nothing. Our boy listens in silence before realizing why. He had absorbed it. He turns away, processing this revelation. After a moment, he places a reassuring hand on his friend's shoulder and tells him that everyone makes mistakes. They should be understanding of each other. Smiling, he asks if Shim Diaku would show the same understanding if their roles were reversed. Shim Diaku grips his hand and exclaims, "What are you talking about?" Our boy sweats nervously, wondering when he should tell him the truth to avoid endless complaints. Clouds drift across the blue sky as he hears a question echo in his mind. Should he reveal everything about himself? The sky turns golden with sunset, and the answer becomes clear. He should not even ask. The warm glow illuminates the hospital room. Shim Diaku checks his watch and notes that it is late. He asks if our boy is hungry and suggests getting something to eat. Shaking his head, our boy declines. He picks up a booklet about the 5 sleeping heroes and grins as he shows it to his friend. It is from the Seoul History Museum, which is apparently very popular. Shim Diaku looks at him and stands up. I'm heading to the 1st floor. There are too many journalists and people there right now, so it wouldn't be a good idea to go together. Our boy simply tells him to say outright that he is leaving alone through the back exit. Shim Diaku tells him to return straight to the hospital later. As evening falls, a shadowy figure in a black hoodie steps through a slightly open door. A quiet notification confirms successful authentication. As our boy walks into the museum, he gazes up at a massive hanging skeleton and questions what kind of display this is. Pausing by a staircase, he notices something familiar. White dust swirls in the air as he enters a room facing 4 ice statues. He lowers himself to the floor in front of them and apologizes for being so late. Looking at his frozen comrades, he tells them that the world has changed. They protected the world they had once dreamed of. The ice figures remain motionless. Our boy softly wishes them peace. His gaze falls on the ice figures, and he notices a thick layer of dust on them. Standing up, he absent-mindedly brushes the dust off their feet. When he reaches out to shake one of their heads, he suddenly freezes. A system notification appears, confirming that the mastery of the freeze skill has been acknowledged. Insufficient magic parameters have prevented the removal of the ice cover. He stares in disbelief, and a new message informs him that the freeze skill has the capability to break the ice. Our boy's breath catches as a single thought takes over his mind. Could he actually bring them back to life? An information window appears in front of his palm. Clenching his hand into a fist, he reads the message and questions whether his magic rating is truly just 18 or if this was done to him intentionally. He stands in the museum hall, staring at the information window as the system displays details about his abilities: freeze, guardian of darkness, night hunter, heroic composure, weapon mastery, and intuition. His status indicates a significant decrease in attributes, with his original characteristics only restoring as he levels up. Muttering to himself, he acknowledges that regaining his former strength will take time, but it is not impossible. His eyes lock onto one specific detail. The skill rating is marked as X. He recalls Shim Diaku always saying that there was nothing beyond level S. Our boy considers the possibility that he is the first person to obtain an X-rank skill. However, his magic remains a problem. Smirking, he scans the information window, his finger touching a line stating his title, Spring Brewer S level 1st floor master, with a magic recovery speed of 500%. He wonders if he earned this title after defeating the Frost Queen. Examining the details further, he realizes that each time he ascends the interdimensional elevator, his overall stats increase by 30 points. Imagining a towering structure piercing the clouds, he understands that climbing the floors will not only restore his level, but also enhance his abilities greatly. An image of the Frost Queen flashes in his mind, and he considers the possibility of fully mastering her power. Stretching out his palm, he concludes that if he succeeds, he will be able to melt the ice and save his friends. Pressing his hand against an ice figure, frowning, he quietly tells his frozen comrades to wait a little longer. Gazing at the 4 ice figures, he solemnly promises to bring them back. A loud voice echoes through the rectangular hospital building, questioning if he seriously intends to re-enter the game. Sitting at a table with a bowl of soup, our boy casually asks why the man is so surprised. Fighting is the only thing he knows how to do. Then, he questions why Shim Diaku is wearing a wig again. Shim Diaku throws up his hands, exclaiming that the decision is too sudden. Not long ago, all our boy talked about was retirement. Taking another bite of his food, he replies that 25 years have passed since then. Shim Diaku adjusts his hair and insists that returning is a bad idea. Our boy turns to him and asks why. Shim Diaku explains that he first needs to recover properly, but there is another issue: the demons. Our boy pictures a figure in a black cloak and hood. Demons are players who exploit their awakened powers for selfish desires, committing crimes, engaging in illegal activities, murder, and terrorism. Shim Diaku continues, comparing demons to a malignant tumor in society. Sitting beside the bed, he explains that from the 2nd floor onward, there are no surveillance cameras or satellites. No country has the resources to suppress the demons anymore. They have become too comfortable. Holding his spoon, our boy listens as Shim Diaku emphasizes that things have worsened, especially because he was not there. Nodding, he acknowledges the situation. Picturing a group of smirking bandits, he asks if those creatures still hate him. Shim Diaku confirms that nothing would bring them more joy than killing him. He warns our boy to abandon the idea of returning entirely. As he continues eating, our boy hears Shim Diaku's next words: the only way to return safely is to abandon the name Spectre and go by his real name instead. He wonders why he would ever do that. Holding up his spoon, he calmly states his goal: the 10th floor. Shim Diaku looks at him in shock and demands to know why he has suddenly decided this. Our boy responds that the 3rd floor is a volcanic zone with no known way to pass through. Holding his spoon, he questions what would happen if he did know a way. Shim Diaku jumps to his feet, eyes wide, and asks if he has an idea. Our boy answers that he needs the Frost Queen's core. Placing his spoon down, he states simply that he ate it. Shim Diaku, still processing, asks if he means food. Our boy's expression darkens as he clarifies. Shim Diaku stares at him in shock. A deafening scream echoes throughout the hospital building. Grabbing our boy by the collar, he shakes him, shouting in disbelief. Did he actually eat the Frost Queen's core? Panicked, our boy tries to explain. It was not intentional. The moment he defeated her, the core was automatically absorbed into him. Shim Diaku grips his head in frustration, yelling that his blood pressure is skyrocketing. Coughing, our boy points out that this is how he gained the freezing ability. Rubbing his temples, Shim Diaku takes a deep breath. With this ability, our boy can cool the heat of the 3rd floor. Looking at his comrade, he suspects the real reason for returning is tied to his frozen teammates. Sitting upright on the bed, our boy confirms this. Shim Diaku leans back in his chair, finally satisfied with the answer. Silence fills the hospital room. Checking his watch, Shim Diaku announces that he will handle the doctors who saw our boy's face. It is the least he can do. Our boy claps his hands together and grins, calling him the best. Leaning against the bed, he remarks that his level has been reset, meaning he is currently at level 1. Shim Diaku asks if all his stats have been reset as well. Our boy points at him and confirms it. Picking up a red-covered book, he asks if Shim Diaku can make him a new player license. A blue information window appears above Shim Diaku's watch. He suddenly remembers something he forgot to mention. When our boy hears this, he gets up from the bed. Shim Diaku explains that guilds now hold more power than associations. Our boy looks at him in shock, asking if that means the associations lost their right to issue licenses. Shim Diaku clarifies that is not the problem. Envisioning a group of silhouettes, he explains that in large guilds, it is now customary for guild leaders to personally attend player license exams. Holding a plastic license card, he continues, a license can only be confirmed if the player passes an open exam. Our boy sighs and leans back on the bed. That means Shim Diaku cannot help him this time, and the process is far more complicated than before. Looking at our boy, Shim Diaku tells him that this is actually a great opportunity. Waving his hand, he questions how they would support him if he does not prove himself. Our boy smirks, picturing people watching him under the glow of lanterns. If he wants to succeed, there is only one path forward. He must achieve the best results possible and become someone every guild will want to claim. He sits up, a smile playing on his lips, saying he cannot wait for the exam. Beneath the vast blue sky stands the round tower of the Players Association, the designated location for the license examination. A large crowd has gathered in the hall, awaiting their turn. Our boy, after hearing his serial number, 75, receives his ticket and glances around, taking in the grandeur of the place. It is evident that a considerable amount of money has been spent on this establishment. Observing the other participants, who have been instructed to remain in the hall until called, he notes the casual atmosphere. With a slight chuckle, he takes a seat, realizing that his turn is still some time away. As he sits, black flashes flicker around him. He contemplates whether he should listen in on the conversations of the other participants. Focusing his senses, he activates the abilities of the Dark Guard and Enhanced Hearing. The world around him takes on a purplish hue as he concentrates. Voices emerge. One individual inquires whether others have seen the morning news. The conversation shifts to the ancient dungeon on the second floor, which has finally been conquered. It is also revealed that today's examiner will be none other than the president of the association, Diaku. If a participant fails today, it will mark their 4th unsuccessful attempt. After absorbing this information, our boy leans back, deciding that everything remains relatively calm. Suddenly, a bright blue screen materializes in front of the candidates. A voice announces that candidate number 1 should proceed. The screen displays a room where a man wielding a pole stands, ready for the examination. A countdown initiates the test, and our boy watches with curiosity. As the countdown reaches 0, monsters begin to appear in the blue-lit chamber. A spectator beside him notes the impressive fighting spirit of the first participant. As the battle unfolds, the commentator observes that the monsters, intimidated, have started retreating. One of the onlookers expresses admiration, convinced that the participant will easily pass, though another player expresses doubt. In his mind, he envisions a man armed with a spear facing a formidable monster, reflecting that a spear is an excellent weapon for defending a given area. Our boy exhales, thinking that when an enemy approaches, one should not simply swing recklessly. It would only make matters worse. On the screen, the monsters overwhelm the participant, knocking him down. A final announcement declares that candidate number 1 has failed. Our boy smirks, concluding that the failures will likely continue in the same manner. A voice resonates from within the examination room. Candidate number 75, it is finally your turn. Inside, behind a glass panel, the examiners converse. One of them remarks that the day's candidates have been unimpressive. Another examiner agrees, stating that none have even met the basic requirements. Diaku, appearing impatient, insists that they expedite the process and summon the next participant. Black sneakers step into the room. The examiners glance up, momentarily stunned. A man with dreadlocks raises an eyebrow, questioning the identity of this individual. Their attention is drawn to the arsenal he carries: a sword, a bow, throwing knives, and even a spear. He appears to have brought every weapon at his disposal. An examiner clad in a vest crosses his arms and comments skeptically, observing that the candidate is lean and unlikely to handle himself well in combat. The blonde examiner in a suit scoffs, dismissing him as yet another specter imitator. Diaku, looking at his fellow examiner, acknowledges that while he instructed the candidates to stand out, this is almost comical. He shifts his gaze back to our boy, who stands confidently, his collection of weapons at the ready. The voice of the examiner calls out, "Are you ready?" Our boy turns slightly, nodding in response. The announcement follows. The examination begins. Opponents begin to materialize around him. The system identifies them as dwarves, standing at an average height of 130 centimeters, physically inferior to the average human. These green-skinned dwarves wield knives, their eyes gleaming with hostility. Our boy quickly assesses the situation. 20 dwarves, each one appearing surprisingly lifelike. They may attempt to emulate real dwarves as much as they wish, but to him, they remain nothing more than constructs. A nostalgic smile tugs at his lips. This scene reminds him of past battles. Without hesitation, he calls for an attack. The green monsters charge forward, their movements swift and coordinated. They surround him, intending to overpower him with sheer numbers. Yet, he remains unfazed. With a swift motion, he hurls several blades simultaneously. The sharp impact disperses the dwarves into shimmering blue pixels. Two more adversaries pause in shock before turning to flee. Our boy analyzes the situation. If he continues eliminating them, reinforcements will simply take their place. What, then, is the purpose of this test? He contemplates the best course of action. Blades glint between his fingers. He senses movement behind him. Without turning, he flings the weapons, striking his pursuers precisely. However, more dwarves attempt to ambush him from behind. Without missing a beat, he draws his bowstring, a radiant arrow forming as he releases it. A sharp whistle cuts through the air. The glowing arrow streaks forward, striking multiple targets with precision. Our boy recalls being taught archery by a renowned marksman. He mimics the stance of his friend, Gilbert, who always wears a hat. A green dwarf bares its teeth as two monsters charge toward him, screaming. Our boy decides that a bow will be the last weapon he uses in this fight. Instead, he draws his blade from its sheath and touches the floor lightly with the tip of the weapon. As he stands with the sword in hand, the dwarves rush at him. He grins. Our boy tightens his grip on the blade and swings it at the oncoming monster. His eyes burn with determination. Bright streaks of light flash around him as he moves. The stunned brunette observes in awe, wincing as he imagines the pain, before hearing the announcement. Participant number 75, our boy, has successfully passed the exam. Congratulations. Standing alone in the now empty room, our boy reflects that if he is experiencing this much pain, he must work on his physical endurance. A blonde observer, watching from the sidelines, exclaims in amazement. Another examiner, a brunette, nods in agreement. A female examiner remarks to her colleagues that she had misjudged him. He is not just another imitator of Spectre. The man with dreadlocks comments on his impressive skill with a spear. Another examiner notes that, despite his thin frame, he is remarkably adept at using multiple weapons. The girl beside him points at an information window, noting that his only officially registered weapon skill is at a D rank. Her colleague, surprised, asks for confirmation, clarifying that it isn't even a utility skill. If he possesses only a single D rank skill, training him could be futile due to the numerous restrictions he would face as he levels up. The examiner with dreadlocks acknowledges his natural combat abilities, while the blonde dismisses them as unworthy of investment. The girl with the bob cut touches a form, suggesting that they should avoid unnecessary risks. There's no need to take the hard way, she adds. Diaka chuckles, sipping from his cup. If that is their reasoning, then there should be no objections to allowing him to join the Players Association. He places the cup back on its saucer, a guilty thought crossing his mind. He had fabricated his profile. Before them, an information window materializes, displaying the participants' details. The name Seo Junho is clearly visible, along with an official stamp marking the exam as passed. The sun reflects off the round dome of the association tower. Diaku is visibly displeased. Meanwhile, our boy lounges on the couch with a pack of chips, laughing as he flips through a novel. He exclaims that the story is unrealistically funny. Chips and soda litter the table around him. Diaku, observing the scene, finds it hard to believe that this disheveled young man is, in fact, the most respected player in the world, the #1 player whom everyone admires. Lying amidst the mess, our boy continues reading. He has been discharged after just 2 days, yet he appears completely at ease. The same specter. Diaku rubs his temples, feeling a headache coming on as his friend's loud laughter rings through the room. He calls out in irritation, forcing a strained smile, and asks what he is reading. Our boy looks up and explains that it's a story where the main character is a priest, but instead of healing, they only fight. Diaku tells our boy to take a seat, as he has brought the items our boy requested. As our boy sits up, Diaku questions why he asked for information on the uncleared gates, pointing out that at his current level, he shouldn't even be considering going there. Our boy responds that he is going. Why else would he have asked for the information? Diaku is shocked upon hearing this, and, frustrated, asks if our boy understands what it means for those gates to remain uncleared. Our boy calmly replies, questioning whether Diaku thinks he has forgotten. He explains that gates are filled with monsters and traps that indiscriminately attack humans, and some gates are so dangerous that players never return alive. The ones that have never been cleared are referred to as uncleared gates. Our boy further states that those are the only gates beginners can enter. Diaku responds by emphasizing that this is exactly why they are even more dangerous. High-level players aren't even allowed inside, while novices go in for the rewards, only to end up dead. Given our boy's current skills, isn't this too much for him? Our boy reassures Diaku, asking why he is so worried. Doesn't Diaku know our boy's true identity? Besides, aren't the uncleared gates a major headache for the association? Diaku exhales and nods, but then hesitates. His thoughts race. How could he have sent his friend to such a dangerous place? Our boy breaks the tension, remarking that this should be a touching moment, but he will go regardless because it will benefit him. He imagines an hourglass atop a mountain of gold and explains that as time passes, the rewards inside the gate increase. The gate has remained unconquered for years, meaning he has the opportunity to gain an enormous amount of experience points. Diaku, his voice edged with concern, asks if he chose this place solely to level up quickly. Our boy stands abruptly and confirms. Frustrated, Diaku shouts that he has already forgotten how he died and resurrected. He questions whether there isn't a safer way to increase his level without enduring so much pain. Our boy remains calm and focused. Staring ahead, he states that his comrades are still trapped in the icy prison, waiting for him to free them. They would have done the same for him. Diaku protests, saying there is no need to take the most difficult path. But our boy shakes his head. This isn't the only reason. Placing his hands in his pockets, he explains that sooner or later, he will have to face the demons directly, and time is not on his side. He must grow strong enough to confront them when the moment arrives. Diaku falls silent, then sighs, touching his forehead. He admits that he had never considered that perspective before. Holding his head, he acknowledges that he never imagined feeling such pressure. Our boy pictures himself fighting demons effortlessly and thinks that he wouldn't describe it as pressure, but it's best if Diaku remains unaware. Diaku, resigned, touches his clock. If he cannot stop him, he will at least find out which gates he can enter. Our boy picks up a soda bottle, listening as Diaku explains that, at his current level, he can only enter unconquered gates. He asks where they are. A blue system window appears in the room. Diaku explains that the gates appeared 7 years ago. Since then, 142 people have attempted to conquer them. None have succeeded. The screen displays details about the dungeon, the Curse of Dawn. The entry requirement is level 1 or lower, with a team limit of 10 players. The capture condition is to survive until dawn. The difficulty level is marked as medium. Pointing at the screen, Diaku clarifies that only level 1 players can enter, which is why this place is called the Grave of Beginners. Our boy analyzes the conditions and notes that they don't seem particularly difficult. The dial on his wrist glows as he checks his earnings. Diaku points at him, declaring that since he now officially belongs to the association, He is his subordinate for the next year. The younger man blinks in surprise. A subordinate, he repeats. With a mischievous grin, he dramatically introduces himself while wearing a mask, mockingly addressing Diaku as his master. He promises to show him what true loyalty looks like. Sprawled out on the couch once again, our boy casually inquires about housing, wondering if he can just stay there. The association has a separate building for players, and he expects a room with a good view. Diaku, holding a box, considers the request and agrees. It's a good idea. He will be safer here. Placing the box on the table, he adds that if things go well, he might even dedicate an entire floor to him. Our boy smirks, noting that it is no longer his decision. After all, he will make Diaku work hard. His attention shifts to the box. The cardboard flaps are slightly ajar. Diaku gestures toward it. "Open it," he says. "Your uniform is inside." The brunette wonders if he has received something unusual. He takes out a black jacket and questions why it is so light. Tugging at the fabric, he notices its elasticity. Holding the uniform in his hands, he turns to Diaku, who lifts his shoulders with pride. Diaku confidently states that it is good. He confirms with enthusiasm, explaining that it is cool because it is a masterpiece crafted by none other than Kwan Noya. Our boy, amazed, asks if the old man is still alive. He envisions an elderly figure leaning on a massive axe, grumbling about his back, and hears that Kwan Noya will turn 98 this year. Looking down, our boy listens as Diaku elaborates that Kwan Noya has passed his workshop onto his grandson, who continues the family trade. Smiling, our boy acknowledges the information, suggesting that he should drop by and say hello. Diaku, closing his eyes, immediately refuses. The young man standing opposite frowns and asks why. Diaku replies that for his own safety, he has to be cautious in situations like this. Our boy, puzzled, questions if Diaku now suspects Kwan Noya. Meeting his gaze, Diaku clarifies that he does not. A moment of silence follows. Our boy then clenches his teeth, realizing what this means. They are monitoring the workshop. Diaku visualizes a handshake, confirming his suspicions. The demons are fully aware of our boy's connection to Kwan Noya. He recalls the younger man standing beside the old blacksmith and warns that meeting now would risk exposing his true identity. Grimly, our boy concedes. If he were to travel abroad as a rookie simply to visit Kwan Noya, it would certainly raise suspicions. Diaku places a reassuring hand on his shoulder, explaining that he has already informed the staff of their current predicament, so they will understand. He taps him on the shoulder, reminding him that, for now, nothing can be done. His priority must be getting stronger. Inside the cardboard box, the black uniform lies neatly folded. Our boy asks Diaku to pass on his gratitude to Kwan Noya. Rummaging through the box, he contemplates what weapon he should use. He is informed that the association's warehouse contains superior weapons, and he is free to choose any he prefers. Turning around, he expresses his excitement at the opportunity. Diaku warns him not to compare the association's arsenal to the craftsmanship of a true master. The brunette slips into the black jacket and pants. When asked when he plans to leave for the capture mission, he admits that he initially thought he should depart immediately, but he still needs to train. Spreading his arms, he confesses that just passing the exam has left him exhausted. Without sufficient physical conditioning, he won't be able to fight either monsters or demons. Even his clothes feel loose on him. Standing beside him, Diaku agrees with his decision and inquires about the duration of his training. Hesitantly, our boy asks if a month is too long. Diaku shakes his head and assures him that 10 days will be enough. A ladder stands among the trees beyond the fence. 10 days later, in Namyang Province, Kianma Mountain, our boy stands before a glowing blue portal. Smiling as he gazes at it, he says it is time to move forward. The brunette takes a determined step into the luminescent blue circle of the gate of the Curse of Dawn. The condition for capture is simple: survive until dawn.